In this episode, we come to a topic that shows how security management grows stronger over time instead of staying stuck at the same maturity level year after year. A new learner might think the main goal of security is to stop incidents from happening. And while that is certainly important, real organizations also need to learn from the incidents, disruptions, and near misses that still occur. That learning is where continuous improvement begins, because every event reveals something about the way the organization makes decisions, manages risk, communicates under pressure, and relies on people, processes, and technology. For someone studying Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, this subject matters because security leadership is not only about prevention. It is also about making sure that each difficult event leads to better understanding, better controls, clearer responsibilities, and a more realistic view of risk than the organization had before. When that happens, a bad day can still produce valuable progress instead of becoming just another painful problem everyone wants to forget. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Continuous improvement means the organization keeps refining its security program based on evidence, experience, and changing conditions rather than assuming that once a policy is written or a control is installed, the work is basically done forever. In simple terms, it is the habit of asking what worked, what failed, what changed, and what should be adjusted before the next challenge arrives. Beginners sometimes imagine improvement as a large formal project that happens once every few years, but mature security management treats it as an ongoing discipline. Small process corrections, clearer decision paths, stronger communication, better monitoring, and smarter prioritization all count as improvement when they reduce future risk or improve the organization's ability to respond under pressure. This matters because no environment stands still. Threats change, business processes change, people change roles, vendors change services, and old assumptions slowly lose accuracy. Continuous improvement keeps the security program alive and relevant by making sure that real-world experience feeds back into the way the organization protects itself. A post-incident review is one of the most important tools for continuous improvement because it creates a structured chance to learn after an event has occurred. The event might be a confirmed security incident, a major control failure, a service disruption with security implications, or even a near miss that revealed dangerous weakness before larger harm occurred. The main purpose is not to retell the event for curiosity or to produce a dramatic story for leadership. The purpose is to understand what happened, why it happened, how the organization responded, what the consequences were, and what lessons should shape future action. A beginner may think the review is only for very large crises, but smaller events often contain useful lessons too, especially if they expose recurring problems in process, communication, oversight, or decision-making. A strong security manager treats the review as a management opportunity. It helps turn a one-time event into a source of knowledge that can improve controls, sharpen risk understanding, and reduce the chance that similar failure will happen again. One of the biggest misconceptions to leave behind early is the idea that a post-incident review is mainly about finding someone to blame. If the review becomes a search for a person to embarrass or punish, people will protect themselves instead of speaking honestly about what really happened. That defensive behavior weakens learning because important details stay hidden, uncomfortable truths go unspoken, and the organization ends up with a shallow explanation that sounds tidy but does not address the deeper causes. Good leadership does not mean ignoring accountability when negligence or misconduct exists. Accountability still matters. What matters just as much, though, is creating a review process that asks how conditions, decisions, controls, communication paths, and assumptions combine to allow the event to happen or worsen. Many incidents are not caused by a single dramatic mistake. They grow out of small weaknesses, unclear ownership, rushed decisions, incomplete visibility, or known issues that were tolerated too long. A useful review looks at that broader picture so the organization can improve the environment, not just point at the nearest individual. For that reason, The review should involve the right mix of participants rather than only the security team. Security professionals may understand the technical or control-related aspects of the incident, but business owners understand operational consequences, managers understand decisions and resource constraints, and support teams often know how the event affected daily work and customer-facing processes. Legal, compliance, technology, operations, or vendor management participants may also bring important perspective depending on the incident. This broader participation matters because the same event often looks very different from different positions inside the organization. A system outage may seem like a technical problem to one group, a service delivery failure to another, and a risk governance issue to leadership. Bringing those views together helps the organization avoid narrow conclusions. It also supports shared ownership of the improvements that follow. If only one team attends the review, the final lessons may be too limited. If the right groups participate, the organization is more likely to identify practical changes that fit the way work is actually done. Timing matters as well. A post-incident review should happen soon enough that the facts, decisions, and observations are still reasonably clear, but not so early that the organization is still too deep in immediate response and does not yet understand what occurred. If the review happens too soon, people may be guessing, reacting emotionally, or missing key evidence. If it happens too late, memory fades, records get harder to reconstruct, and urgency disappears before lessons have been captured. A wise security manager looks for the right balance. The organization should stabilize the situation first, confirm enough facts to support a meaningful conversation, and then hold the review while the event still feels real enough to inspire attention and honest reflection. This timing choice affects the quality of learning. A rushed review can produce shallow conclusions, while a delayed review can turn into a symbolic meeting that repeats generic advice. Strong management uses the review window carefully so the event can be studied with both freshness and clarity. During the review, the organization should look closely at the full sequence of events rather than focusing only on the moment the incident became visible. What conditions existed beforehand? Were there warning signs that nobody recognized or acted on? Did earlier control failures, exceptions, staffing issues, or delayed decisions make the event more likely? Once the incident began, how quickly was it detected? How clearly was it understood? And how effectively did communication and escalation work? These questions help build a more complete picture of the environment around the incident. Beginners often focus on the attack or failure itself, but the most important lessons are often found in the time before and after the visible event. Weak detection, unclear ownership, poor documentation, limited preparation, or delayed coordination can turn a manageable issue into a major disruption. By tracing the full path instead of a single dramatic moment, the organization learns not only what happened, but how its normal operating conditions shaped the outcome. It is also useful to separate immediate causes from deeper contributing factors. An incident may appear to start with something obvious, such as a missed control, a successful phishing message, a vendor failure, or a poor configuration decision. Those details matter, but they rarely tell the whole story by themselves. The deeper question is why that condition existed, why it was not corrected sooner, and what organizational factors allowed it to remain in place long enough to contribute to the event. Maybe a process was unclear, maybe responsibilities were split awkwardly across teams, maybe monitoring was weak, or maybe known risks were accepted informally without enough review. A mature post-incident review looks for those deeper layers because that is where lasting improvement usually begins. If the organization stops with the most visible cause, it may fix one symptom and miss the broader pattern that made the event possible. Looking deeper does not mean making the process academic or overly complex. It means being serious enough to find changes that will still matter 6 months later, not just changes that look active next week. Once lessons begin to emerge, the next step is turning them into action instead of leaving them as interesting observations. This is where many organizations struggle. They conduct a thoughtful review, identify several meaningful lessons, and then fail to assign ownership, define timelines, or connect the needed changes to real operational processes. Without that follow-through, the review produces awareness but not improvement. A good security manager makes sure findings become specific corrective actions, stronger oversight expectations, updated procedures, clearer responsibilities, better training, or revised controls depending on what the incident revealed. Some actions may be technical, but many will also involve process discipline, communication habits, escalation rules, or governance improvements. What matters is that the lessons become visible changes in the environment rather than remaining trapped in meeting notes. Continuous improvement is not measured by how insightful the review sounded. It is measured by whether the organization actually changed something important because of what it learned and whether those changes reduce future exposure in a meaningful way. This is where risk reassessment becomes essential, because a serious incident often changes what the organization knows about its own environment. Before the event, a certain risk may have been rated as low, moderate, or well-controlled. After the event, that same risk may need to be viewed very differently because the organization now has evidence that the weakness is more likely, more damaging, or more widespread than previously believed. Risk reassessment means taking that new evidence seriously and updating the organization's understanding instead of clinging to older ratings out of habit. A beginner may think reassessment only applies to the exact issue that caused the incident, but the lesson is often broader. If one access control failed, perhaps similar processes elsewhere deserve review. If communication broke down during response, maybe that weakness affects multiple incident types, not just the one just experienced. Reassessment helps the organization move from isolated event analysis to a broader and more realistic picture of what risk looks like now that new facts have surfaced. A reassessment should examine not just whether a risk exists, but whether its likelihood, impact, and scope need to be updated. Perhaps a weakness once considered unlikely has now shown itself to be quite plausible under real conditions. Perhaps the impact turned out to be more severe because recovery took longer, customer disruption spread farther, or internal coordination proved weaker than expected. In some cases, the incident may reveal that the organization's inventory, dependencies, or ownership assumptions were incomplete, which means the scope of the risk was misunderstood from the beginning. These changes matter because leadership decisions depend on the accuracy of the risk picture. If the organization learns something important from an incident but leaves the old assessment unchanged, future treatment decisions may still be based on outdated thinking. Strong security management uses the event to sharpen the organization's judgment. Risk reassessment is the mechanism that carries those new lessons into the formal view of exposure that leaders use to prioritize action, allocate resources, and evaluate whether current controls remain adequate. The value of risk reassessment becomes even clearer when you remember that incidents often reveal patterns rather than isolated flaws. A single event may expose larger issues involving governance, third-party oversight, change control, training quality, escalation discipline, or resilience planning. If the organization reassesses only the narrow triggering condition, it may miss the wider set of related risks that now deserve more attention. For example, a data exposure caused during a rushed business change may point not only to a technical weakness, but also to weak review practices, poor cross-team communication, or lack of process ownership. In that case, the real improvement opportunity is broader than fixing one mistake. It involves rethinking how similar changes are evaluated across the organization. That is why post-incident learning and risk reassessment belong together so naturally. The review explains what the event revealed, and the reassessment updates the organization's formal understanding of exposure so that treatment can be improved across more than one location or team. This is how one event can lead to stronger maturity instead of a narrow one-off fix. Leadership support is especially important during this stage because improvement work often competes with normal business pressure. Once the incident is contained, teams are usually eager to return to regular operations, clear backlogs, and move past the disruption. That is understandable, but it creates a risk that learning work will be rushed, postponed, or reduced to symbolic action. A security manager must help leaders understand that the organization has not fully responded to the event until it has captured the lessons, adjusted the risk picture, and acted on the most important findings. Leadership support gives those improvement actions legitimacy and staying power. It also helps when changes require budget, process redesign, or cooperation across several departments. Without visible support, Teams may agree in principle that the lessons matter while still allowing the daily rush of work to push improvement aside. Continuous improvement requires enough leadership discipline to treat learning as part of response, not as an optional activity that only happens if time remains after everything else feels comfortable again. Metrics and follow-up can help show whether the organization is actually improving rather than simply claiming to have learned. This does not mean turning every lesson into a complicated dashboard. It means finding sensible ways to watch whether corrective actions were completed, whether similar incidents are decreasing, whether response speed improved, whether reviews are happening more consistently, or whether previously weak areas now show better control performance. These signs help leaders see whether the review process is creating real change. They also help prevent the same lesson from appearing again and again in new reports with no meaningful progress behind it. A common organizational failure is to hold several post-incident reviews over time and keep identifying similar gaps, because nobody ever followed through strongly enough to change the underlying conditions. Monitoring improvement work helps break that cycle. It connects lessons learned to accountability and shows whether the organization is becoming more resilient, more disciplined, and more self-aware as a result of what it has experienced. At a deeper level, continuous improvement through post-incident reviews and risk reassessment strengthens culture as much as it strengthens controls. When people see that the organization responds to incidents by learning honestly, improving thoughtfully, and updating its understanding of risk, they begin to trust the process more. They are more likely to report concerns, surface weak signals, and participate constructively in reviews because they believe the goal is better performance rather than simple fault finding. Over time, that creates a healthier security environment. Problems are raised earlier, lessons spread farther, and leaders become more comfortable hearing difficult truths because they know those truths lead to better decisions. This kind of culture does not happen automatically. It grows when reviews are fair, reassessments are taken seriously, and improvement work is visibly supported. For someone learning CISM, that is an important insight. Security maturity is not only built by preventing incidents. It is also built by responding to incidents in ways that make the organization wiser, more honest, and better prepared for what comes next. As we close, the main lesson is that continuous improvement through post-incident reviews and risk reassessment is one of the clearest signs of mature security management. Incidents and near misses are painful, disruptive, and often expensive, but they also reveal truths the organization may not have seen clearly before. A strong manager makes sure those truths are not wasted. That means holding reviews that focus on learning rather than blame, involving the right people, examining the full sequence of events, identifying deeper contributing factors, translating lessons into concrete action, and then reassessing risk so leadership decisions reflect the new reality. It also means following through long enough to confirm that improvement really happened and that the same weaknesses are not quietly returning under new conditions. For a beginner, this topic shows that security leadership is not about pretending failure will never occur. It is about making sure failure leads to sharper judgment, stronger processes, and a more resilient organization. When that happens, even difficult incidents can become part of how the security program grows stronger over time.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.